above all.
What up, everyone? DJ Anubis here with you on Meltdown Radio podcast with my basically season 6 review of Cobra Kai, but I'm also doing some reaction videos as well as kind of talking about the history of Cobra Kai and a history of the Karate Kid, etc. Because for those that aren't initiated into this series, there is backstory here, and I'm not really going to spend a whole lot of time because I'd be here forever doing that. However, to understand Cobra Kai as a series would be to understand, have to go back to the beginning. And you have to go back to 1984, where a 14-year-old Anubis was in a movie theater watching this movie called The Karate Kid, starring Ralph Macchio, William Zabka, Martin Cove, etc. Moriarty, I forget the name, Pat Morita as Miyagi, and Elizabeth Shue. So, quick rundown of the initial movie. Ralph Macchio plays Daniel Larusso, who moves to LA, begins to get bullied by William Zabka's character, Johnny Lawrence, who is basically an expert in karate via the Cobra Kai dojo run by John Kreese, played by Martin Cove. And as the movie progresses along, Pat Morita, who plays Mr. Miyagi, is like a maintenance worker in the apartment complex that Daniel Larusso and his mother live. And after witnessing and kind of saving Daniel from an onslaught of getting his ass kicked by about 6 different Cobra Kai members, including Johnny Lawrence, he then takes upon himself to start teaching Daniel karate and unique ways, wax on, wax off. You probably heard it all before. And then, of course, the culmination of the ending with the tournament matchup between Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso, where the famous crane, the flying crane kick that ends up getting Daniel the championship over Johnny Lawrence. Then, of course, the second movie goes into where it was basically just upping the ante, and it became now more than tournament. Now it's more like life and death, and this is where we have a character by the name of Chosen, who is the antagonist. And I'm not going to get into too much detail, but the series went on for about 4 movies, and then abruptly stopped. And through that, you had different. It kept trying to upscale itself. Now the 4th one, which had Hilary Swank taking the place of Ralph Macchio, was sort of separate to a lot of it, still tied in a little bit. But the 3rd film, which brought in Thomas Ian Griffith, who is in this Cobra Kai series as Terry Silver, again, he's another antagonist that's part of the Cobra Kai fold. And over the seasons of Cobra Kai, we've dealt with him and his vengeful, cheating ways of winning at all costs, basically. And this is something that Kreese, as a character, we've noticed in earlier films as well, an earlier part of the series. So Cobra Kai, when it started as in YouTube, before going to Netflix, before Netflix bought it out, had really just kind of tested the waters. And the idea was, well, let's tell the Karate Kid story from the different point of view with Johnny Lawrence and how he's dealt with the loss in the tournament in the first film, and to how it took its toll on him and him trying to bring Cobra Kai back. So this is really, just off the bat, one of the best series you're ever going to find from start to finish. Like, they did such a great job with it. I've been so pleased with it all. I like the characters. Even though we got a lot of new young faces in there, they're all very unique. They're all very intriguing. Their character developments and arcs are very cool. But yeah, so basically, and this is, of course, I'm using the Seikai Taikai card just to kind of show this. But, as we get into season 6 now, as I said, the seasons started out where Johnny Lawrence brought Cobra Kai back, and so he and Daniel Larusso were actually butting heads as adults. Larusso doesn't want Cobra Kai around because he thinks it's just a bad dojo, a bad way of martial arts life. It's just more about attacking, offensive attacking, but the one of the key things is no mercy. So obviously, Daniel Larusso doesn't want that. Daniel likes Miyagi-Do, which he took from his sensei, Mr. Miyagi, and tries to do more of a balanced defensive karate style. And over the course of the seasons, these younger kids, some that are like Robbie Keane, who is Johnny Lawrence's son, gets entangled with, having issues with his dad, trying to connect with him. And then you have Miguel Diaz, who is the son of a neighbor, a woman, his mother, and him live alone, almost like Daniel Larusso back in the day. But Johnny takes Miguel under his wing and teaches him Cobra Kai, and of course ends up falling in love with his mother, which becomes a storyline within itself. So we see the kids, both like Larusso has a daughter and a son, but the daughter's mainly Samantha, the priority here, who is learning Miyagi-Do. And, again, we have another, let's just go through our characters here. So in season 6, the mainstays, of course, we have Johnny Lawrence. Now, he did start coming to terms with Daniel, and they started to become friends and understanding each other one way or the other. But eventually, towards the end of season 6, he ends up taking back Cobra Kai, which, if you saw the intro clip there at the end with Tory and Miguel back in the Cobra Kai uniform, he's also back in the Cobra Kai uniform. So I'm not going to, there will be spoilers, but I'm going to try not to spoil too much for those that still want to watch this series. I highly, highly recommend it. But here is Johnny, of course, in the Miyagi-Do garb. And then, of course, here is Daniel Larusso. So these are our two main guys from the original film as adults, and they're the main, guys in this series. Samantha Larusso, of course, is the daughter. Miguel Diaz as well. And then, of course, we get into a little bit of the Cobra Kai stuff. We got John Kreese. He's a mainstay. Now, believe it or not, his character arc is like one of the best ones. You wouldn't think it initially, but it actually is one of the best ones, especially in the last season. And then, of course, we have Tory Nichols. She's a very complicated young girl. But, at the same time, her character arc is very bad. She went through a lot of different things as a character in the series, and it's kind of nice that her redemption arc at the end there for the win, and we'll get into that a little bit as we talk about now. Two other the mainstays in this last season, of course, are the Iron Dragons, and we have Axel Kovacevic. He's like this tank dude as a fighter, like incredibly strong, skilled fighter. He take a lot of a beating. And he's almost unbeatable at times when he's fighting. And then, of course, we also have Zara Malik. And then if you haven't seen my little tribute video to Reina, this is the actress who plays this character. She's like a 13-time Taekwondo champion. So very fast. So, and it's funny because between the two of them, it's almost like fire and ice, only this is more like you have like the tank and then like the speedster. Like she is very quick on her feet and everything. So like her fighting skills are pretty unmatched, really, for the most part. But they did a nice job with their final fights between Miguel and Axel and Tory and Zara, because they found ways to get them to basically stand a chance and win. So that's kind of the cool thing about that. I'll be going over a couple of videos about some other people's thoughts, like Kevin Lambert, of course, who I collab with a lot. He did a review on the series. I have not watched it yet, so I'm going to do it here with this. But at the same time, I'm going to watch another guy named McClimans. I forget the first name. Sorry. I'll make sure to put the link in there in my description. But they had an interesting thumbnail that basically said something like, "Did Robbie Keane get robbed or get played dirty in the final season here?" So I didn't watch the entire clip because I want to react to it all. It's not very long. That one isn't, but I have my own thoughts on some of that. Like I'll push back on some of that thought process here, but basically in season 6, we start out where John Kreese goes back to his beginnings as a Cobra Kai student of this master, and the master's daughter is somebody he knows well. So their whole thing in the early part of season 6 is to get back to the Saikai Taikai, which is like this big world tournament, which is a little bit more serious than say your average karate tournament. Like it's a little more serious, a little more brutal, a little bit more stuff going on. Obviously, it's not meant to be like blood sport, but there is a moment towards the end of the first half of that season where an accident happens and someone's killed, and then that kind of changes the dynamic of what everyone's feeling. And in fact, that's kind of like a turning point for Kreese of like, how much can your own personal vendetta or vengeance against Daniel Larusso go, or whatever. Like the idea was to try to recapture Cobra Kai, and that's something that Lawrence and Kreese had been battling as student and sensei throughout the entire series, because as time goes on, Johnny was like trying to make Cobra Kai his own and not be as harsh as Kreese was to him. And but at times, because there's the massive respect that Lawrence had for Kreese as a student and as even a father figure, we kind of learned towards the end that, you know, there's a tender moment between Lawrence and Kreese when Lawrence breaks down. It's the first time you really see him as a vulnerable character, expressing how much it pained him that Kreese had basically threw him away after that loss to Larusso in the tournament, and basically said, your second place means nothing. You need to be a champion. Like that, Kreese was so hard in his teachings about that with his students that he lost sight of the forest. You know, it's like, wasn't a very good guy. And even in the second and third movie, where Kreese even became more volatile and with the help of Terry Silver tried to really inflict serious harm on LaRusso's character, or, you know, the LaRusso, the character. So Daniel kind of went through this series pushing back against Cobra Kai because he didn't want that. He hated everything that Cobra Kai stood for at that point. But to Johnny's credit, you know, he instilled confidence in a kid like Miguel, who was being bullied, and same with people like Hawk, who was like one of my favorites from the series. You know, you're able to kind of see a different side of Johnny and his teaching. And then when he and Daniel started to work together, even with the help of Chosen, who was like the antagonist from the second movie, you know, that was a whole redemption arc for Chosen as well, years later. So he became a fixture for Miyagi-Do as well. But yeah, there's really, when it comes to like, and I'll probably get into more when I watch Kevin's video, because I'm sure he's going to kind of review this series as a whole. But I want to get into this first video with these guys. There's a couple of guys here talking about whether or not Robbie Keane was like done dirty with his character until the end. So just so you're aware, again, if you don't want spoilers, maybe go watch and binge watch the series and then come back and watch this. But I'm going to be covering some stuff that is going to be talked about in some of these videos. So I got to just warn everybody. But just a little backstory. The end of Cobra Kai basically is Robbie was fighting Axel from the Iron Dragons for a chance at the championship round. And when Robbie started to kind of gain some momentum fighting Axel, their sensei Wolf and Terry Silver, who was part of that Iron Dragons, he had teamed himself up with them, basically told him to just take out his knee. And so Robbie ended up getting knocked out of the tournament. which then now left an opening, which was one of the cooler scenes of the entire series. At the end there is when Samantha Larusso decides to step down and not fight Tory Nichols for the chance to fight Zara Malik from the Iron Dragons, because she was waiting on the winner. So with Samantha stepping down, Tory automatically got the bid to fight with Zara. So that left the men's with just Axel at this point, because, you know, Robbie could not go. And since Quan, who had been the one to dive in the brawl earlier in the season, probably would have been their champion to fight against Axel, they didn't, you know, at first the guys that's announced, and he's kind of like, well, you know, if Cobra Kai hasn't announced their replacement for him for the fight against Axel, then that would give Axel the automatic championship, which of course he goes, however, Cobra Kai has named a replacement, and thus it turns out to be Miguel, who started his karate career with Cobra Kai. And there's a moment when I told you that Kreese and Lawrence kind of mended their relationship. They came together, and, you know, that was a redemption for Kreese to kind of say, man, I fucked up. I can't change the past, but whatever I can do to help your future, let me do it. And so Johnny's like, well, you can do one thing. And you have to understand, at this point, Johnny is still part of Miyagi-Do as well as Miguel. So Kreese handed over the reins to Johnny, which then allowed Johnny also take Miguel back as the male representative for Cobra Kai. And so there's this big interest with Thunderstruck going on that Miguel, Johnny, and Tory walk out in the Cobra Kai garb, and they look so beautiful. No matter what, no matter how much you feel about the Cobra Kai in the past in terms of like their aggressive behavior and what they were being taught, those colors are lit. They're fucking lit, dude. Great colors. And they look sharp on them. So they come out, and that's basically setting the stage for the fights towards the end. And of course, once Tory and Miguel win their fights, it brings everything to a tie point-wise, which then is handed over to the senseis to fight. So you have Wolf versus Johnny Lawrence. And, you know, whether you believe that Johnny, who's much older than Wolf at that point, and Wolf's a very good, skilled fighter, like, you know, whether or not he could actually beat Wolf, but it's still a good story. But to get back to Keen, like, you know, there's points where, because Tory, see, you have to understand, some of these kids are getting ready to get out of high school to go into college. And so Hawk and his buddy Dimitri, they're best friends, and they were initially going to different schools. Well, they end up, Dimitri passes MIT to go to the school, the college that Hawk got into, because Hawk couldn't get an MIT. So Dimitri, because he cares about his friend, wants to go hang out at a good college with Hawk and still have that friendship without having to worry about distance. And then you got Samantha, who wants kind of like to travel the world and go to a college maybe outside of the Americas. And Miguel, who is her boyfriend, isn't really going into college. However, he won his match against Axel, so that does give him a scholarship, basically, so he can go somewhere within the state where he's at in LA, in California. So he wins that part of the scholarship, which is something the winners will do, and they get that. But that leaves Robbie and Tory. So Tory wins her match, and even though she's not winning any kind of scholarship, what she does do is she ends up securing a contract deal from the sponsor who, you know, is going to sponsor her as the women's champion, which means she'll get money. She was a girl that lost her mother in this final season, took it very hard, and had a hard time finding her focus and her zen. And then, you know, she lives on her own. She's only in late teens, early 20s as far as the character is concerned. So she needs to take care of herself. So with the contract, it helps her immensely, like secures her financial needs. While Robbie, who's the boyfriend, loves her to death, and, you know, he supports her in that. And then next thing you know, the same woman that offered Tory the contract offers him the contract, a contract for the male side. And he was kind of shocked because he blew out his knee through that cheap shot from Axel. But as that person said, you know, your knee will heal, you'll be better, and, you know, you get back to fighting in tournaments. And they offered him the contract. So now Robbie has a goal. Like he's now sponsored by these same people paying him money to be the representative for a male tournament, right? Because Miguel's going to be moving on. I'm sure they could kind of go to Axel or anybody other fighter that's was in the tournament, but they're treating the champions like champions. And since Miguel won't be there to represent karate at that point, it's next man up, and that's Robbie. So to me, and the other thing I want to say before I get into this first video is that, they keep saying, well, Robbie kind of got Jude out of like his good redemption moment, but I don't think so at all. I think really Robbie became the winner once because early on in the fight between Tory and Zara was kicking her ass, and Tory was very flustered and not focused, and then Robbie comes up and the only thing he says to her is "I love you," and that sort of calms her down, and she refines herself. Of course, then he says "show no mercy," and then she goes out and beats Zara. And that to me is like that's his greatest win and achievement. There is winning the affection of Tory, which she's always kind of had, but now it's like she had to hear it from him like that. And that's a great moment for those two. And so like that's why I don't think that Robbie really lost anything in this at all. But let's hear what these guys got to say, and then I'll stop it if I need to kind of comment.
About Robbie, the one I was most curious to talk about, because I think I agree with you for the most part, but I do want to add a perspective to how his story ended.
I might have a counter. Have a counter because I've been thinking about his ending. And my opinion has changed. Like at first I liked it, but then I was like, it feels like a cop out. And then I had to do some research, like to see what the writers have been saying, because they did talk about like certain characters and like endings, and they did say that Robbie was like one of the harder ones to come up with the endings.
Yeah.
So like I'm interested to see what you gotta say.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were in a very awkward spot because I think they knew it had to be Miguel at the end there, right? And Robbie's in a very interesting spot because he lost the first time, he lost the second time, and going into the season, we did need Robbie to have a win. It was like this is his time to finally come up with a win, and I think they were in somewhat a little bit of a hard place to put them.
They were cornered. They were in the corner.
Yeah, and while it does anger me, he didn't get his ending. What's kind of helping a little bit, and this is me adding my own narrative.
See, I don't think he didn't really need that ending. In fact, the way they wrote his dialogue when he's in that locker room on the bench, after getting his knee shattered, he's talking with his dad, and Robbie's actually reflecting. He's like, I spent so much time thinking about the things I don't have, that I wasn't paying attention to the things I do have. So he starts saying, I've got my dad back. I've got my girlfriend. I've learned so much through karate. Like the bigger message, and this is something even Larusso says to Lawrence before there's a switch to Cobra Kai, because Lawrence is like, well, Sam's backing out, but why? Why are you quitting now? They're going to cheat, or they tried to cheat. And so Daniel says, well, look, man, it was never about winning. It's about teaching Miyagi-Do to people and showing them that there's more to life than just like trophies and everything else. And that's sort of the message that Miyagi-Do has. So even when you get to the end, when Johnny's running Cobra Kai, his dojo again, he's teaching his same style, which is all offensive. But it's almost like a tandem now, because Johnny's like, Miyagi-Do is great for defensive and balance, but here at Cobra Kai, we're going to teach you offensive strikes, and we're going to teach you how to go on the attack. Now, he changes something with his mentality where it says no mercy. He says, this down here doesn't apply anymore, but I keep it as a reminder of where I came from and what we're striving to be away from. So yeah, strike first, strike hard might still be there, but the no mercy is what's being changed. And he's like basically giving a referral to Miyagi-Do as far as like, once you've learned some stuff here, please go to Miyagi-Do and learn more there, because you'll be a more well-rounded martial artist. And Robbie, again, understood this. Like it all started to click. Like he wanted to win. He could have beaten Axel probably. The reality is that without the cheap shot, and it's just his bad luck. I mean, that shit could have happened to Miguel too. And the thing is, and the one thing I argue a lot about, people say, well, Robbie needed that moment. It's not just him. Miguel needed that moment too. Miguel was the first season's champion, but there was a fight between Robbie and Miguel as they had the tension back then that Miguel like fell over a railing in school, broke his back, probably was almost not going to walk again. And yet Johnny was able to bring him back and get him back walking and stronger and all that. And there's even a point in the match with Axel that, again, Terry Silver and Wolf are like, this dude's had back issues. Like he had his back broken. If you hit the right disc, it's going to knock him out. This is, again, another cheap thing. So no one's paying attention to the fact that Miguel was in danger of actually going to lose his fucking back again. Now, granted, Miguel didn't leave himself open to that. This is the teachings between Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do, because it gives you both the best of both worlds. So I like that they didn't go to cliche. They didn't like knock Miguel out. And, I'm glad they didn't go with, for Robbie, because you're just going to that well too much. I like what they did. I like that they give these characters a different path than what we're usually seeing with, nostalgic type of thing, because this whole show is based upon the nostalgia of the old.
To what they didn't tell us. There's a part of me that kind of likes the narrative that he was in a very similar spot to his father in the original Karate Kid movie.
Okay,
right?
I actually have a counter to this, so
okay.
I actually watch it. I've had this conversation with people, and they've said the same thing. So I do have a counter to that. So go ahead.
Okay, cool.
I'm actually interested.
Like because I do, like, again, he should have won. I think out of all the characters, he got the worst ending. I think he's very
yes,
like his whole thing about getting the money and stuff like that. I was like, okay, cool. But it's actually Tory's ending that they just gave Robbie also.
Right. It felt like a cop-out.
Yes, absolutely.
It felt like a cop-out.
I couldn't.
But it's not a cop-out, because if they had not given him anything, that would have been a worse ending. Him not getting anything out of you taking the hit on the leg. And even though you had this reflection moment, like the fact that a sponsor was still able to sit there and say, you know what? It's not your fault you got hurt. You know what? And you're a great fighter and you're a great representative. So the fact that they offered it, like they didn't have to. And it's not like even Tory was surprised. So it's like, to me, I don't think it was a cop out at all. I just think at this point, these two, I think, are just overthinking it. Like you're just overthinking everything, because in the end, you want happy endings. He doesn't need to have that win. And in fact, they may get to it in this video, but if they do a spinoff on this, you have all the youngsters to work with. I don't know how many of them are going to do it. I don't know who it's going to focus on. But if Robbie Keane is going to be a part of that, then he can very well, because he's supposedly, him and Tory, to go back and fight in tournaments. That's sort of the whole idea of being sponsored. So they're going to be back fighting or, competing in these championships. So he may still get that moment that you're talking about. He didn't need it now, though, because in the end, if you've got just Robbie, Miguel, Tory, and Samantha, they're going to have to fight each other for the championship. Even if Iron Dragons are out and they're fighting each other, somebody's going to lose. So, and they're all friends. So, why? The way they did it is the best way possible to write this story. It's the absolute best way to do it, because everybody wins. Even if he's not getting that trophy, in Robbie's case, he's getting a win. He's got the girl he loves. He's got his dad back. And now he's got a chance at a career getting sponsored when he didn't think he'd even have a chance doing that. He's doing fine.
I agree more with you. I 100% agree. But there is a part of me that does, to at least help with the pain of him not winning. I kind of like that he's in the same exact spot his father was in the first movie. But what makes him different is that he has a support group. He's grown as a person. He's more mature than his father ever was. And He is taking that same defeat his father did. And he's going to actually make something of himself turn himself into a better man, that his father would be kind of stopping this like cycle of misery that his father kind of put in motion, right? The issue is they don't tell you any of that. They don't show any of that. I have to give him that, right? Like
they did show you that. Like again, the locker room scene is a total example of that. Him reflecting on everything. I guess they just must have missed that because it's a very powerful moment for Robbie. You know, again, like it's different than when Larusso was in there with his leg injury and Miyagi is, you know, I'm going to fix your leg so you can go compete, even though it's not going to be 100% healthy. But the reality is it's a whole different scenario which Robbie has to navigate because they don't have, like Daniel didn't have the magic, you know, woo to go and fix the leg. So, yeah, Robbie still wins, and it's not hard to figure it out. Like I don't know why this guy thinks that he had a hard time picking up on it. I didn't have a hard time picking up on it at all. That's kind of weird that he didn't catch that.
They just kind of like leave him there, and it's like seeing him in crutches the whole season and seeing that defeat. It's frustrating, and I wish maybe we could have at least had a moment to Robbie at the end. We don't really, like they just kind of sweep past it, which is a big problem for me. But also
the only problem I had in this final season is, and I know there's an alternate ending, I think that I read, is I don't want John Kreese to be dead. I know it's a spoiler, but the implication is he's gone because he had to stop Silver from going like threatening Miguel's mother, who's just had a baby and etc. and stuff like that. So Kreese is doing everything to stop that, which is great. But you know, there is an alternate ending, I suppose, that like somebody walks by a magazine cart and there's the picture with Johnny with the trophy on the cover, and the person that picks it up looks like Kreese or is Kreese. I would rather prefer that ending, to be honest. Even if Kreese never showed up again, just kind of like walked away, at least we could say, yep, he stopped Silver and he managed to survive in the process, which would have been great.
It's like, I don't know what I would do differently, right? I don't know how I would fix it either. You know what I mean?
I already know what I would do. But,
okay, tell me that.
So I get what your point is. I've seen a lot of people actually talk about this, like whether it's on like Twitter or Reddit or whatever the case may be. The issue I do have with that, because that's been the theme of Robbie's character. I think they even like said it. Like I think the showrunner said it like early on with Robbie. My issue with that is that they've already done it.
Sure.
Robbie's lost like a couple of times, and he's never let like tournament, like he's never let the loss get to him in a way where like he ends up like his dad going down the wrong path. Like he was fine. Like Daniel talked to him, and you know that moment where he does lose, he's like he takes it in stride. Season 4 he does the same thing. He gets himself together. Like Tory follows him in the back. He's like, I just need a minute. He comes out there, supports her for her match. The issue is they did it 3 times in a row already. That's the big issue. It's like it's a repetitive thing, and I'm just like, this feels like a cop-out. Like, I get it. Miguel has to win this one. I'm all for it, and I do think Miguel should have won the final thing. It's Cobra Kai. I get it. That's never my issue.
And it's for a few reasons, though, because one is, again, they're all friends. Like, the relationships have been rebuilt. And Miguel is not just fighting for himself or Cobra Kai. He's fighting for Robbie. He's like, Robbie was fucked over. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat that dude's ass. Look at that final scene where Miguel turns to Axel and they're both looking at each other, and you can see the determination and focus on Miguel's face. He doesn't even fucking blink. He's like, yeah. And just looks back. He knows it's business. He's going to take care of business. And that's the thing. Like, it's no one is getting dicked over in this series at all, in my opinion. You just can't have 4 winners in the same sense. You can't have 4 champions stand up there. So that's the thing. Even when Lawrence beats Wolf and they win the entire thing, what's the first thing that Johnny does? He says, Daniel, come over here. And he knows it was a team effort. And then you get that full circle where Daniel's like, you're okay, Johnny. And that's a callback to the first film where after Johnny loses to Daniel in the tournament, he takes the trophy from the announcer and gives it to Daniel, says, "You're all right, Larusso." And Daniel's like, "Thanks," and he's really happy about winning. They were repairing stuff right there. There was a lot of shitty shit even in that first movie that some of the young students were not, because Kreese had them do some shitty shit to him, and they didn't like doing it because they wanted to beat Daniel on their own terms. But Kreese back then was a shit for brains. He's just a nasty dude. So he would win at any cost. It was the whole no mercy thing at the play here. But now Johnny's got Tory and Miguel approaching everything differently. And then Miyagi-Do has its place in there as well. So again, Miguel wasn't just fighting for himself. Again, this is a guy that was almost paralyzed. So he has his own redemption to get in there as well. And he's also doing it for Robbie because they are friends.
It's how they did it.
Sure.
Robbie was supposed to win that season 4 All Valley.
Yeah.
They changed it to Hawk winning. I still don't understand why, but I think they're probably kicking themselves in the back of the head now because they pissed off probably your second biggest fan base in terms of characters, of the teams. You probably pissed them off.
Well, I don't care. Hawk is a fan favorite, dude. Hawk was actually a fucking cool character, period. He's another one that had a really cool arc because for those that didn't watch the series, Hawk and Dimitri are best friends, but at some point they were actually enemies. But there's a moment where Dimitri's getting jumped by a bunch of Cobra Kai, and that's when Hawk jumps in and saves him, and that's when they rebuild their friendship. So Hawk is even now in the final season, Hawk got to fight. He didn't win, but he got to fight. And it's cool because regardless of where you think he fits in with Robbie, Hawk is still a great fighter. And I like the fact that he had the opportunity to shine this season as well. So I don't know. I'm still not buying into this that Robbie's getting Jude out of anything or being done dirty. I think that's a stupid argument. The thing is, Robbie and Miguel are your top 2 protagonists outside of the women. And like I said before, you can't have everybody win. Not everybody can win. And the way that the story's written makes the most sense. Because Robbie, there's more for Robbie to repair in his life than there is Miguel. Miguel had at least a stable home in terms of his mother's love and support. Robbie was fighting with his mom. He was fighting with his dad. He was lost. He was in his own. He's like Tory. That's why him and Tory have such a connection. They're both kind of dealing with similar things on their own for most of these series. And the thing is, Tory has it worse. She's the one that has the deal with no mother anymore. And then she's had her up and downs with Kreese. That's why I love that final scene where she looks over and Kreese is over there doing this. And she's very happy to see him because there's that respect there from student to sensei. And then, of course, Johnny does his bow to show his forgiveness, at least understanding what Kreese tried to do to make it up to him. So, again, I'm not buying into this Robbie needed this weird thing to happen in order to give his character a good ending. I think that's bogus. I'm sorry. I just think that's bogus. It's all opinions. I get it, but it's just bogus to me.
If you go to John's Instagram, it's so people aren't being toxic, but they're being critical. They're actually giving criticisms.
It seems like the actor's a little pissed. It seems like the actor's a little salty about it, which he should.
Tanner, he's been vocal about how he.
Yeah.
And even when he tries to make himself feel good about it, you can kind of tell he's not really feeling it. He's just nah.
Right.
But if you go on, what's the guy? It's John's. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's one of the showrunners. He has the picture of Robbie in the little goggles thing that he had on, and in the caption it's Robbie wants you to watch part 3. In the comments, it's people are pissed. They're dude, why would we watch this? He didn't get a good ending. And it's people, and it's not death threats or anything like that. How it would usually be, on some crazy Twitter stuff. They're actually being critical, giving good points in I haven't looked at it in a minute, so it might have changed, but the ones that I did see.
This is probably my problem with fandom in general, right? and it doesn't matter if it's Cobra Kai or some other series or movies. It's like, I'm passionate about movies. I'm passionate about entertainment and stuff like that, but I'm not about to go flood an actor's timeline or their Instagram accounts or whatever and bitch about like, oh my God, you were fucking robbed, dude. Like, I can't fucking believe it. Like, you gotta be fucking mature about these things. It's fucking movies and it's entertainment. You can be passionate about stuff, but not act like an asshole. And if you're taking it that serious that you think that you have to like lose your shit over something that's going on in a fucking fictional account or something, that's a problem. You need to disengage from the media, period. Like, it's unhealthy. It is. People doing that kind of shit is dumb.
I was like, this is justified, but like I get what you mean. Like, his ending, I did feel the same way. Like, after I got done watching it, I was like happy, and then like after I edit and put it up, and I rewatched it just to like sit in the moment and not like as a reactor, I was like, it feel like they tacked his like ending to Tory, and I don't like it. And I'm happy you said that too, because I was like, I can't be the only one feeling that way.
No,
and it just felt like a cop out. Like, it was like, okay, we kind of backed ourselves into a corner with the Robbie thing. He should have won at some point in the show, and that's on us. And so here y'all go. But
actually, he did. This is why you have to reflect on a series. For those that don't know, when they were setting up the fights in Miyagi-Do, Tory had to fight Samantha, which Tory lost. This is right after her mother died, so Tory was a mess, so she could not focus, and she was just losing her shit. So Samantha, because Tory just lost her shit and didn't want to talk to anybody about it, and she was just struggling, Samantha got the bid. Miguel and Robbie fought. And who won that match? Who won? Robbie. Robbie got the nod. So, technically, Robbie did win. He just didn't win a fight to where the opponent cheated. Now, you can argue, well, maybe they should have had Miguel win and then the reverse, and then you could do it that way. But then we're going to sit there argue, right? Like, we're going to be like, well, what if you switch the roles, right? If Robbie had won instead of, even though Robbie was never a Cobra Kai, so you could never put him in the Cobra Kai uniform. Or was he? Was Robbie a Cobra Kai? Maybe he was. I got to double check something. I'm trying to remember if he was even in a Cobra Kai fighter. I don't think he was. I don't see anything it says. Maybe you can remind me in the comments if he was. But play out the fact that he wasn't. He wouldn't have been able to fill in for that replacement because you had to be either current or former Cobra Kai to be a part of that team. That's why Miguel was able to, because he was the original Cobra Kai student of Johnny Lawrence. And of course, Kreese is the one that he handed over the reins to Johnny so that he could do that. But for shits and giggles, if Robbie had been Cobra Kai and went in place of Miguel, and Miguel's the one that lost, got his knee taken out, which would we really be happy about that? Because he couldn't walk after being paralyzed by Robbie, and then fucking have to turn around and get his knee taken out by a guy, and then what? If Miguel gets a contract joining Tory, are we still going to say that's a cop out? I think it's kind of bullshit to argue this, because it's I think that everybody won. The writing of this whole series has been excellent. I think anybody nitpicking it is just being a baby. It's ridiculous. The outcomes that happened were the best possible considering these circumstances.
What y'all gave us is not satisfying, though. And I do agree, out of all the teams, he had the least satisfying ending.
Yeah.
Because I'm just I don't feel like it wasn't earned, and it just didn't. I don't know. Like it just didn't feel right with his character. Like I just felt cheated somehow. Like
yeah, no,
like the son of Johnny Lawrence. Like Robbie has never, and that's why I hate the Miyagi-Do thing. I've seen people come in my comments and say, but it's like the Miyagi thing. He's, you know, but I'm like, Robbie's never been fully Miyagi-Do. He's been a good blend of both. He's been a good, like he's right. Cobra Kai by blood. Like that is his blood.
Yeah, but that's not how it works. In fact, again, you don't have a true understanding of the Robbie Keane character if you don't. I mean, you try to sit there and say he has balance, but if you understand that part of it, then you know that when he's in that locker room and he's reflecting on his life, he's now understanding that the Miyagi-Do teachings are teaching him something else than his dad had not done early in his life. So even his forgiveness for Johnny, his dad, is a part of that self-reflection with Miyagi-Do. It is. And that's the most powerful moment for Robbie Keane as a character. I don't know if I have to watch any more of this. I mean, it just sounds like a lot of crying and whining to me, but, you know, again, it's just opinions. I disagree heartily on it all. I don't think really it's a bad thing the way it ended. I think this is like one of the best fucking series, bar none, compared to a lot of other series where they usually flame out within the last couple of seasons. As much as I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the last couple of seasons were not very good for me. So this is just eclipses a lot of stuff that I've seen from start to finish. All right, so my next video that I'm going to go over is, of course, by my buddy Kevin Lambert at Entertainment Headquarters, who gave his own review of the season. So I have not watched it, and I want to see what he's got to say about it, how he felt about it. And again, I'll stop and start it if I want to chime in about something. But yeah, let's hear what Mr. Lambert has to say about Cobra Kai.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Entertainment Headquarters, and welcome to my segment, Television Chronicles. So this segment on the channel is dedicated to all things on television and shows on streaming, and there's no better way to
get cracking
by, you know, talking about a show that I've enjoyed from the very first season. And it's a show that is nothing for me but a nostalgia ride into my youth. And the show I'm talking about is none other than Cobra Kai. So Cobra Kai season 6 part 3 is finally landed on Netflix a few weeks back. I've just had time to watch, you know, all of the season. I've started, you know, from the first part, second part, and then finished obviously the third part today. I didn't really want to watch them in parts as they were airing. I thought I'd wait till they all hit Netflix and just, you know, do a full season watch. So that's why it's taken me some time to get to this review. But what can I tell you about Cobra Kai? For me, Cobra Kai, like I say, it for me is a nostalgia ride into my youth growing up. I remember the first Karate Kid, and you know, we had Rocky. You know, we remember what that was about. This, you know, guy who was just trying to make a life.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of skip ahead.
Nostalgia-ness from the 80s and
together to be proud of.
So let me ask you, do you have one more fight left in you?
outstanding. Such an amazing music score. Just a great show in general.
Now, he does touch on a lot of that. Like, one thing that I've really enjoyed about Cobra Kai is the soundtrack and the music, because it's what's really cool is, especially early on, when there's a cool scene. Now I'm older, I'm like 50, almost 55 now, and I'm basically an 80s kid. And so during that time I was very much into the hard and hair rock, and then of course into the heavier stuff as the late 80s, early 90s started going. But watching Johnny in the early seasons when he's taking Miguel under his wing, and he's not just teaching him karate, but he's like teaching him about music. He's like, no. You don't want to listen to that. You want to listen to this. And he pops into his walk when he pops in Rat, Invasion of Your Privacy. And I'm like, that's my boy. That's my boy, Johnny. And of course, again, like that final scene where Miguel ends up going back to Cobra Kai to fight. The intro music is Thunderstruck by AC/DC. So I've loved the music and the rock that they've been using throughout the series. Just adds more to the nostalgia of the whole vibe of the series, and then going back to the movies and all that jazz.
So Cobra Kai season 6, basically it's the culmination of all of the events coming to one final battle. You know, the ups and downs with Johnny Lawrence, and the life and the path he took many years ago after losing to Daniel Larusso, and Daniel Larusso's life skyrocketed. He had this amazing life, built an empire, this business empire, had a loving family, daughter, son. Johnny Lawrence, his life went down a tumultuous path. Many ups and downs, lots of issues with the law, drinking heavily, losing his wife, you know, not really being a true father to his son. And through rediscovering the world of Cobra Kai and karate, and meeting Miguel and his mother, and teaching him the ways of karate, he was able to find that inner discipline and kind of give him a bit of peace and drive and something to fight for, something to live for. And then obviously Daniel LaRusso comes rushing back into his life, and it comes down to them, you know, the old rivalry was Daniel throughout his entire life, all of this Miyagi-Do. It's really just a lie. It's just a lie. That's what he believes. He believes, you know, he's conflicted with his emotions. And Miguel, Tory, you know, Tory was I loved Tory's arc in this story. It started off as a very troubled young woman who had a lot of anger issues, bitterness, and she followed bad advice and followed the wrong people. And the next thing you know, she kind of redeemed herself. Well, she redeemed herself like the season before. But then she suddenly, you know, she becomes a stronger figure, and her increased relationship changes, and you know, her and Robbie's relationship really blossoms in this. And I love Robbie's kind of storyline and sacrifices in here. Miguel's storyline, you know, his started off very strong, and then you know, him going on to win this Saikai for, you know, Cobra Kai of all places. But it's like a full circle moment because it's where he started. I just love that.
Which is why I believe that his redemption arc was just as important as Robbie's at any point. But you can always tell that the path that both Miguel and Robbie were taking were much, much different. And they both kind of needed something different in the end to kind of complete who they were as people. So again, you know, no offense to the two guys doing the other video, but everyone wins, and there is no cop out, because the reality is Robbie, if he hadn't got a contract, that would have been a worse ending. You would have been basically saying, we're going to wipe our ass with Robbie's face because he doesn't get anything except for a broken leg. And instead, he has that moment where it's not just people around him like Miguel, Johnny, Daniel, Samantha, or whoever, Tory, who believe in him. You have a fucking person who just offered Tory a contract for sponsorships doing the same. This person has said to themselves, oh, I saw you got your leg taken out, but we are still so impressed with you that we're going to pay you to now be a representative for our company. So he didn't lose. It's not a cop-out. He earns that. If he hadn't broke his leg but lost to Axel, are we still bitching that he got a contract? Fuck no. Come on now. It just doesn't make any sense.
Them elements. Same with Tory. Tory deserved to win.
Yes.
And, you know, Samantha Russo. Sam,
and I'll say it right now, like, if you want to argue, like, people who had the most unimpressive ending, it would be Samantha. It really would, because Samantha, she could have fought Tory for that spot, but she didn't. And, you know, we're going to argue, of course, she's being a good friend. Also, it's fighting is not as important to Samantha, or at least winning a chance at a title, because she's got other things that she wants to do that's beyond karate. But hers was the least impressive of any ending of all the main four characters. So, like, I don't see anybody saying that, you know, she, like, her ending's not better than Robbie's, in my opinion. I mean, she gets to go see the world, obviously, but it's not like she's really winning at anything. The only thing she's winning at is life. And she's the same way as Robbie. They both are looking at life differently than Miguel or Tory were. And even then, Miguel, I don't think his long plan is to be like fighting in tournaments. I think he really thought, okay, I'm going to win this, but then I'm just going to go and try to go to school, try to keep my long distance relationship with my girlfriend going if I can. Whereas Robbie and Tory, who, again, similar issues growing up, are now the face of the tournament, like All Valley. So it's like they both won. And, you know, really, despite the fact that Miguel won the tournament, how much more is he actually winning? He's not getting a contract. He's getting a sponsorship, but he's not getting a contract for money. He probably could if he kept fighting, but the reality is that I don't know if you're going to argue someone not like if you're going to argue someone getting the short end of the stick, it has to be Samantha. Has she won anything really throughout this turn? I mean, she's beaten Tory like once, I think, or whatever. But again, like, I'm not really just, if you're going to argue those kind of semantics, I don't know what to tell you.
Her character arc for me, it kind of dropped off the map. For me, her story arc for me was the weakest.
Yes.
Of all of the characters for the final season.
Great fucking point, my friend.
The strongest storyline, and the one that it is all about, and the one it should have always been about and is always been about, is Johnny Lawrence.
Yep.
Johnny Lawrence, who had lost everything. And, you know, you had lots of flashbacks throughout the season of, you know, him down and out, you know, like season 1 to now, you know, there he is sitting at his mother's graveside drinking a bottle of whiskey, just feeling absolutely sorry for himself. So, you know, this whole story arc is always been about Johnny Lawrence. Daniel Larusso.
That's true, because even earlier in the seasons, which is one of my favorite parts, is when Johnny is reunited with some of the guys from his dojo as older adults. In fact, one of them who became a minister was the one that married him and Miguel's mother in this final season. So, but there's a moment where they're all just getting together and they're going camping or out on a trip together, guys trip. And of course, one of them was sick, ends up dying during that trip. But it just shows you, like, again, as Kevin's pointing out with his happy hands right there, that, you know, Johnny, this whole journey is for Johnny. That's the whole point of this whole series, is about what happened with Johnny, why he got to where he was. And the wonderful thing about the series, and when you watch those early movies, if you watch those first 3 movies, you come out really hating Kreese, hating Silver, hating Johnny, and all of them. Like, there's never a point where you're really feeling any empathy or sympathy for those characters. What's great about Cobra Kai is it just flips the script. Now, we do have to deal with Kreese still being kind of an a-hole through most of this series. But the fact that you can still get to the end and Kreese can still find a way to redeem himself just shows you how this series is so nice about empathizing with forgiveness and rebuilding relationships and friendships. And it's really great at that. It's like, if you were just somebody who watched those early movies, you're saying, well, Cobra Kai, man, like, fuck Johnny Lawrence, but you don't, right off the bat, you will start to really feel bad for Johnny, where he's at in life. And it's so nice to see him progress throughout the entire series. And I just love it. It's just such a well done thing. And the fact that the youngsters have their own trials and errors is equally as good.
Had his shining moment. Daniel Larusso has had his moment to shine. We had 3 films. This was a nostalgia ride for that character.
And keep in mind, there's another film coming up, Karate Kid, which is tying into the Jackie Chan film from a few years back. And in the new one, Ralph Macchio's Daniel Larusso is going to be making an appearance there. I'm not sure how much or to what extent, but that's going to tie in the Jackie Chan reboot and then kind of come into with the Cobra Kai stuff. Now, I don't know if Johnny or anyone else from the series is going to show up in the film, but we do know that Daniel Larusso is going to be somehow in the mix. So I like that a lot. Again, like, this is when you're a writer for what's going on here and you've did all your cameos from the past films, except for, I don't think we ever saw Hilary Swank, which is unfortunate. I mean, we could have found a way to tie her in somewhere, but I guess it just never got around to her. She couldn't do it. But a lot of the great cameos, Elizabeth Shue came back, and we saw Chosen, of course, and then even Kamiko from the second film. To now we have Jackie Chan, and the next film is going to be connecting to this stuff. So it's a lot of fun, very well thought out. Don't know if that movie's going to be good, but from the trailer I did a reaction to, it looks fucking amazing. So I'm happy about that.
See how he came to after the events of the last Karate Kid he was in. But we never really got to see what ended up being Johnny Lawrence. And when the season started, he was in a very dark place. And to see where he comes to and to see where he gradually, the place he reaches, it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful moment for him to have gone through all the trials and tribulations and to have kind of this anchor around him, these emotions that he's struggled to fight that have controlled his life up to this point. And then he finally meets the student Miguel. He meets his mother, they fall in love. He's now going to be a new father again. He has a second chance. All of the past these past issues he can now put aside and move on, except for one. In his last moment, in his last final peace of mind, to finally release that anger and that doubt and that frustration, and is to finally open up and to tell the one person he looked at to be his anchor, to be his savior, to be his father figure, was John Kreese.
Yep.
And the fact that from season 1 to this moment,
that was literally one of the best moments in the entire series, because if you would have told me after the first 5 seasons that we would ever have that kind of moment between Kreese and Lawrence, I I would have said you're out of your mind, because they waited till the last possible moment to make Kreese change his entire perspective on his entire life, on what he did to Johnny, what he's been doing to them the entire series. So and I'm glad they didn't give everybody redemption. Like Terry didn't get one, so thank God they didn't fucking go too much to that well. But I do think it was important for Kreese to have that clarity, because watching Johnny as a character, that was the very first time that I seen him vulnerable. That whole scene with him and Kreese is very moving, and you can just see the pain on Johnny's face at how Kreese kind of like just threw him to this wayside after that loss. And Johnny explains like that's what set him down a dark path, like drinking and like just wandering aimlessly. He just didn't trust anybody, didn't trust himself. And it probably affected his marriage as well as his relationship with his son. It's just a lot of crazy shit. And it's a powerful fucking moment. And it's really one of the best in the entire series. Even though Johnny has, befriended Daniel and they're together and they're friends and, they've worked out all those past traumas, like that moment with Kreese is like the best of the entire series.
There was always this tug of war. There was this tough love element. And I really think from the John Kreese we met in Karate Kid season 1, Karate Kid film 1 to now, they actually made him I wouldn't say an anti-hero, but a villain who had his own redemption.
They made him like you would never think they would be able to give him any kind of redemption. Like, I mean, there might be people that watch this and say to themselves, yeah, no, Kreese is a real piece of shit human being. He's done a lot of bad shit. And really, Kreese has, and Kreese acknowledges all that. There's that moment prior to their deep discussion that Johnny's like, if you want forgiveness, you're not going to get it. And Kreese is like, oh, I don't deserve it. But I do think that despite it not being said, that bow to him at the end is actually him forgiving him. He's basically said, yeah, you made it up. Now I might still hold on to some of that shit because, you did some crappy shit to me, but he can tell that Kreese was pained by what was happening. And that's the great thing about Kreese in this, is that he wasn't just trying to make amends with Johnny. He was trying to make amends with Tory, because he's the one that actually pushes her to get back into the tournament. He's like, look, I do think you could win this. And I've always admired your fighting and your strength and your will. And, she kind of initially wants him maybe to come back with her, but he's like, that's not a good idea. And so that's why he steps aside. And he basically kind of goes on this run, except for Daniel. He never actually approaches Daniel about anything, but I think that's kind of good in a way, because Daniel would always look at him as the evil villain. And so with Johnny, it was a different relationship with Johnny, because Johnny was his number one student. So it's important that Kreese had that moment with Johnny and Tory as the top two, because those were the two most important people to his legacy, basically.
From where we took with, from Karate Kid to season 1 to 3, I never thought John Kreese could ever be redeemed. But
right?
It's fast-paced. It's done in quite a quick fashion. The demise of John Kreese and, of course, Terry Silver. But for me personally, it was the final chapter for even their character, their intertwining relationship in story arc. They, met at war. They met on a battlefield, and they died on a battlefield, technically, in a symbolic.
And that is something else with Kreese's character, is that we start to learn about his background and like how he was raised through his karate teachings, through that master that I talked about earlier. And that dude was like a piece of work. Like he's if you thought Kreese was evil, that dude was really evil. And that it's funny is because it took his own daughter to kill him to take over the dojo for them to change the perception and how the teachings were going, because she was easily as brainwashed as Kreese was by her own dad about in terms of punishing people, punishing your opponents. And that was kind of the thing, right? So initially and early in the season when Kreese is back with the Cobra Kai and they're coming there as a collective, and that's of course when it leads to Kwan's death. And that's when it's really a turning point, like I said earlier, where Kreese is like, what have I done? So it's funny because we watch and we've seen some films where Kreese and Silver were so eager to punish Daniel Larusso in like the most horrific ways through manipulation and torture and just straight up brutality, that now we see that Kreese was a product of that same thing. And that's why it's almost like he was carrying on this tradition of just being a hard ass and teaching these younger boys, like, you know, the way of the fist, in a sense of like no forgiveness and just destroy your opponent, because they're also military. So that's also another part of that. Silver was part of that military stuff. So Silver never got to that point where he actually, because he was dying, he was ill. So for him, he wanted this like claim to fame by joining the Iron Dragons, basically as their sponsor or whatever, to get like that win under his belt. He was done with Cobra Kai, but he wanted to rub it in the face of Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai and Kreese and everybody to basically get that last win before, you know, he passed away. But Silver was always going to be an evil douchebag. And maybe it's part of his persona since his days playing a vampire in John Carpenter's Vampire. I don't know. But the reality is, it's good that he never got the redemption. But as I said before, I was hoping that Kreese would make it out of there. And maybe if there's a spinoff, maybe we get that kind of arc. Like, I would not mind seeing Martin Kove come back and maybe join up with Tory and Miguel again. We're not, because Johnny's running the show there, but maybe just come up somewhere and show up and just kind of be like a whole change man and the sorts, maybe just more of a advisor or whatever. But who knows how, you'd have to make sure the story is well written, but I would not mind seeing Kove come back at all.
Stick away. They both fought and died fighting the final battle, which was great to see. But prior to that happening, we had this amazing moment. Johnny Lawrence finally allowed all of it out. He finally released his anger. He finally allowed those emotions to be released. And due to all of that,
that was like some of the best acting between both those actors. Like, that was just, because you would think of how much of a hard ass that Kreese is, that Cole would be able to get that downtrodden face of basically regret and understanding, looking at Johnny, who is basically looking at him like a father figure, and just letting out his emotions. Like, that's something that that Kreese never taught, was weakness. And so now, Kreese is having to reevaluate everything. And so he's looking at this kid that was his best student, and he's like, what the fuck did I do, man? I destroyed this poor guy. And he was like the most loyal of students I ever had. And, we never saw Johnny after that first film, except for the beginning of the second one, when that's the whole choking out and Kreese breaking his second win trophy. And, that's when Miyagi comes and does the whole like honk, when he outwits Kreese as a fighter. So, we never seen Johnny again after that. And so when Cobra Kai starts, that's when we actually pick up where the pieces have been left with Johnny. And I think hats off to whoever came up with the idea. Hats off to Zabka and Macchio for wanting to come back and do this, and hats off to all the other former actors that play with, like even Mike Barnes from the third one came in, and it was so good. I love it. Like, I love when they think things out. They see the forest from the trees. They're forward thinking with how they write. This is why, even though Marvel has gotten a little bit redundant and watered down, that first phase of Marvel was like the best shit ever. Like, they thought it all out. They were always a step ahead, knowing what they wanted to do. And you kept your characters, you kept your actors, and we've done the same thing here with this show. And like I said, now we're going to move into the movie with Jackie Chan, and that's fucking amazing, man. Like, I love that, and that means you're thinking ahead. Like, they could have totally ignored the Jackie Chan film altogether, but instead chose to bring it in, because Chan does play a different character. He's not playing Miyagi. It's the same similar vibe as the first film, but it's not the same character. So now they can add in Larusso, who has the Miyagi-Do teachings, and supposedly help out with this young kid who's trying to learn martial arts from Jackie Chan's character.
He was able to move on, but he still had that little bit of doubt. When the last part of this tournament, there is a draw, and because there's a draw between Cobra Kai and the Iron Dragons, they have to have the senseis battle, and it's because they battled.
Now, it's interesting. I like that Kevin's talking about this, because I wasn't really touching on it much, but Johnny is much older than Wolf. And when we think of, like, logically in terms of endurance and the ability to take hits, like, there actually is an early part of this fight where when Wolf hits Johnny, he feels it. Like, it does some damage. Like, Wolf is like, he's the guy that trained Axel and Zara, and, as far as sensei is concerned. And so his teachings are brutal. And, again, he's like the new villain basically in this season. So he's like, outside of Silver, he's the next guy in line to be the next Kreese, basically. But what they did, and I'm glad they didn't go this well. Initially, I thought, oh my God, Johnny's going to do the fucking crane. And I said, please don't do that. And he didn't. I was happy they didn't go there, because that would have been too much of a callback. But what he does use Miyagi-Do to outsmart Wolf. And that's something that even Johnny had to learn as a fighter, because he is a strike first guy. He's an offensive fighter. I love that stance, by the way. Both of them have some great stances there. But instead of doing the crane, Johnny still does a Miyagi-Do move, which is just the leg sweep. And that's what actually gets the winning point. So even though you think he looks over at Daniel and he's like, you get this nod between them two, and I'm thinking, oh no, not the crane. Don't do the crane. Please don't do the crane. Instead, he just does his leg sweep and he gets that point and he wins the match, which wins it for Cobra Kai. So I like that they allowed Johnny because Johnny really wanted to stay within the boundaries of his own mastery of Cobra Kai. But he had to understand also that he had to kind of use some of that defensive balance that Daniel was teaching. So that's basically what saved him, because if he would have just gone offensive, he would have been fucked. This helped Tory against her match against Zara. Zara's very quick. Tory was trying to attack. I think she was leaving herself open to attacks by Zara. So when Tory switched it up after the I love you from Robbie, she started doing a little bit more Miyagi-Do, and even Miguel was using some of that. So it's a great way to showcase that they were learning the best of both worlds, and they were outsmarting their opponents in the end, who were actually much more dominant than all their fighters. Without the teachings of both styles, Cobra Kai would not have won those matches. So that's the benefit of what Daniel and Johnny were doing as a collective between the two of them.
He was, Sensei Wolf, who is amazing, by the way. Some of the newer characters that they introduced into season 6 of Cobra Kai were really, really great. Really, really great. I really enjoyed them. You had is it Quan, the character of Quan, who joined Cobra Kai he was an amazing character. He was a lovable villain. You loved to hate him. You really, really loved to hate Quan. You really did. In the whole of season 6 is the build up to the tournament itself, the aftermath of the events at the tournament, and he becomes. But going back to Johnny Lawrence, he has this amazing moment where he finally, thanks to even Daniel Larusso and the members of Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do pushing him forward, he finally defeats Sensei Wolf, and he becomes the champion, not just of the valley, but the champion of the world. And he finally gets to hold his own trophy. This, of course, is not from the show, but I just love this photo. I just think it's so much a great photo, showcasing the emotion, showcasing the peace.
I'm kind of just going to move ahead a little bit because I'm trying not to go super long with this video. So sorry, Kev, but I'm going to try to get to your ending thoughts here.
Within Johnny's life. And he's got Miguel, he's even got, Johnny Lawrence cliffhanger. And it felt like an episode of a soap opera with a bit of seriousness, a bit of comedy, nostalgic vibes, legacy characters. In every episode seemed to have some sort of cliffhanger. And like I say, it got cheesier and cheesier with each season, but it's good cheese. It's addictive cheese, and I've thoroughly enjoyed Cobra Kai, and I'm interested to see where the Miyagi verse is going next with Karate Kid Legends. I'm gonna have to get myself a copy or find somewhere to watch the remake or the reboot, or the side the side boot, whatever you want to call it, because it's basically set in the same world with Jackie Chan. So that's going to be interesting. But if I'm going to rate Cobra Kai season 6, I'm going to give it a strong 9 out of 10. Despite it not being the strongest of seasons, I think it was well worth the wait just to see Johnny Lawrence get the ending he truly deserved.
All right, so we got his rating. Now, me personally, I'm not going to worry about rating this season by itself. I probably would agree with Kevin a little bit, but I'm just going to give my entire thoughts on the entire season, which is a 10 out of 10. There's just no getting around it. No season has kept me intrigued, excited, pumped up, hyped, and just overly happy from start to finish like this season. It's been a very long time since any show I've ever watched would keep my interest as hard as this did. And it's funny because even when this season got released, I still took a few days to get to it because, I don't know, it wasn't like I was not looking forward to it, but obviously I'm doing a lot of content nowadays, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm going to be able to sit down, watch it, enjoy it, and the minute I do, I always binge it. I'm actually envious of those now that might start be watching Cobra Kai, because now you can just watch from start all the way to finish, and you don't have to worry about waiting months to get to the next season. When Kevin and I talk about doing some of these episodes, stuff like this, I told him, I said, you know what, when we do something like For Those About to Die, like I know he still wants to get to that. Like, we're just gonna watch the whole fucking thing and just talk about it. Like, there's no sense in doing a season. I mean, this worked out with Cobra Kai because it's the last season that they're gonna do for the show until the spinoff. But certainly going forward, it's much easier to talk about a season or a show when you've watched the entire thing. Now, granted, I don't ever expect to do a review for Supernatural. I've seen like the first 8 seasons back in the day, but there's like 22. I'm just not sitting through 22 seasons. I'm not doing it. That show's rinse and recycle anyway. So like, it's a good show. It's not going to show me anything new at this point. So whenever you have something that's like when Stranger Things finishes, I will do a review of the entire series. In terms of like just talking about, like, I'll do the final season. I'll be able to, just like I did here. But yeah, as far as like, I won't do a series that's like beyond 7 seasons. Like, I just won't do it. Like, it's just too much. Can't sit through that much shit, man. Just can't do it. Anyway, coming up on the channel here, going forward tonight, I'll be doing my Spotlight special with Olvin for Kaiju Spotlight with King Kong. Later tonight, Mr. Tony and the Dead and I will be doing another Ghouls episode. We just finished wrapping up the first one with Nothing But Trouble. The one tonight will be a 1980 movie called The Night of the Werewolf, starring Paul Naschy. Tomorrow, Neko and I will try to do an episode of Global Unscripted where we're going to talk about the documentary about Gabby Petito, who was killed by her boyfriend. I'll get into it more when I talk to her about it, because we both kind of felt the same about the parents of the boyfriend that killed her. Just really pisses me off. But anyway, Friday, a couple of things going on with Kevin Lambert. The first thing is the Retro Movie Show with Point Break, my pick this month. Mr. Tony the Dead will be a guest on there, and Neko is going to try to be a guest on there. I think Century is going to try to be a guest on there as well. And then later in the evening, I know that Kevin is doing a live stream of a Q&A we're going to talk a little bit about, as a collective on the panel, like our favorite heroes and villains of film and series and stuff like that. So be looking for that. And then Saturday, Ulva and I will team up again for the Silver Screen Savants to do my pick, Escape from New York, starring Kurt Russell. So that's everything coming this week. Also, I've been given the okay from the boss to concentrate a little more on this channel. So the days right now, so I'm having some hard times getting my new job squared away. I still need some work, but she's basically pushing me to like get my channel going. She wants me to be a YouTube star, which isn't going to happen on that level. But if I can get monetized, great. That's going to be my goal. So the days that I usually take off, like Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I'm going to try to start putting in some shows there to work with other people so I can spread my shit out more. But yeah, that's kind of like what's going to be going on. The only other thing really to talk about as far as this show is concerned is the 21st of this month is about 4 days ahead of my birthday, and I'm going to be doing a live streaming event where it's a versus episode between Tales of Halloween, the anthology from 2015, and Trick or Treat, the anthology from 2007. So I kind of borrowed the Fat Samurai Guy's versus project that he usually does, and I just wanted to create one of my own to do because I really wanted to pit these two movies against each other. But I am going to have a sweet panel involved with a lot of people that I collab with, including Samurai Guy and hopefully Rob from ETN, Kevin Lambert, Mr. Tony the Dead, Anthony Jordan, Ulvin, Sci-Fi Century, I think, says he's going to try to get in there. And Neko too. So like I really going to have a lot of fun with that on my birthday show, and then of course some other things are sporadically in there through some other channels, but I'll update you all when those happen. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, man. Did you watch the series? What did you think? What do you think about that first video where people feel like maybe Robbie got Jude out of his played, or they just did him dirty. Like that's how they claim it, right? So how do you feel about that? Do you agree, or do you think I make more sense? That I think everything worked out the way it should have. Give me your thoughts. Hit the like and subscribe button. I will put links to both those videos in the description box. And yeah, man, thanks for the support. Remember, if I get to 5K subscribers, doesn't matter when it happens, if you follow my directions on that little opening video on my page, if you're liking the videos and commenting occasionally, it doesn't have to be every time, but if you're commenting and you're interacting with us on live shows, your name will go into a pool to win my extra Super 7 Godzilla -1 figure. So it's worth about $80 to $100. So not cheap, not super expensive, but it's a nice figurine for people that like to collect. And if you want a chance to win one, because I have it, yeah, just be engaging with us. It doesn't matter what you're doing or saying. Be polite or just be civil, even if you disagree with us. But yeah, just give me your thoughts, man. What do you feel about this? And please, any collaborators I work with, please go and subscribe to their channels as well. They're very great people and great content. And I really enjoy their friendships and their insight in the entertainment world as well. And they're just as passionate about this stuff as I am. So please check out their content. Please, please, please. See you next time on the Metal Terminator podcast. Enjoy the rest of your evening.